Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. This time we're going to continue our little trek with iZotope Neutron and look at another one of the advanced features. And this one is the Track Assistant. So we're going to try that out. So this component is embedded into the Neutron whole plugin, and it's basically designed to listen to a portion of your mix or a portion of the track that you apply Neutron on. So it could be the drums, it could be the guitar, and you could do it on all of them, obviously. But it listens to it, it determines what it is and changes some settings and takes a best calculation of what it thinks it should do to fix the track and make the track sound better. So I think it's a useful tool as a bit of a guide, as a bit of a learning tool, give you a starting point. I would definitely not use it as a crutch to mix your song, but you could use it to give you some indication of potential problems in a track and sort of fast track you to finding those problems. But I would always double check everything that Track Assistant is suggesting and adjust it after the fact. So once it's made the decisions, tweak it, adjust it, turn bits off that you don't like, turn bits on that you do like, change how much it's boosting or cutting EQ settings and that sort of stuff. So I would definitely do that. So let's go and check it out. Okay, so the purpose of Track Assistant is that it is supposed to use some intelligence. It is supposed to listen to your audio track. Now, whether that's you've put it on the mix bus, whether you've put it on an individual guitar or a drum or whatever it is, it listens to that and it makes some decisions about what it thinks what you should do to it from a processing point of view. Okay, so it can't do every single step of the process, but it does apply some standard things. It works out what your neutrino setting should be, and it works out some EQ values and some other things there. So let's turn everything off. And I've got this on the main mix bus, so I'm curious to see what it does with this. But when you go into the Track Assistant here, you can obviously override some of these functions. So instrument is set to auto detect. So that's the value that it will fill out in the little neutrino section down the bottom. But you can override it right now and just say, I'm going to pick one because I don't want it to detect it. Okay, so there's not a real great description of what these actually are in the manual. So I guess you pretty much just need to visualize what they're talking about, as in a balanced is just a well-balanced song. You know, I guess you'd call it just sort of regular, nothing special, nothing over the top. Then you've got warm, so that's going to lean on the warmer, darker side of a mix. Up front is obviously going to try and really bring things forward. Probably a lot of mid-frequency boosting there. And then you've got your intensity levels. So that's how much it's going to apply its processing. So, you know, you can set it low, so it's subtle, medium, or high. So let's just start with the default, which is obviously auto detect on, balanced to medium. Click on next. Now we need to play the song. You'll hear some stuttering as it's turning on plugins, applying processing, making adjustments to what it feels. And now you can accept it, which we will do. And now we can see what it's done. Okay, so it's decided that the neutrino section here is a guitar instrument, mainly because that's probably what it heard. It heard most of that, so obviously that's subjective because really this plugin should be on a track, not on a mix bus. It had applied some EQ, and you'll see the EQ adjustments it's made here. So it's put a filter on, it's done a bass boost, Little boost here at 184, boost to 736, and you cut, very big cut at almost 8K. And a little subtle bit of a shelf going on above 11K there. So that's our EQ section. Then it's applied some compression. So it's gone for a vintage style compressor here first. And yeah, it's compressing a lot heavier in the mids than it is in the highs. Then it's applying a digital style compressor. And we're doing some funny stuff here with peaks and resonance and stuff like that. But that's actually turned off, so that's interesting. So this one's quite heavy, 8.5 to 1 ratio. But it all depends on how much it's actually compressing. And then it's done a bit of an exciter, set it to tape mode in the higher end and warm mode in the lower end. And the cut at the top end there is actually in dynamic mode, which is interesting. So it felt that there was some peaks that were too high in certain spots. So you can see it tipping there. So we can hear what it does, each individual component. Here's a fair bit of compression going on. Okay, so let's go and do that same function on an individual track where it's probably more appropriate. So let's find something. Let's go with a bass. All right, so let's pull one of those up. Okay, let's do that again. We'll set it to those same settings. So this time, what have we got? So this time it's detected that it is a bass, so it's done well there. And it's got some unusual sort of boosts in the mids there, a little bit of a dip there, 200. We've got an exciter where we are doing a retro on the top end, and on the low we're doing warm. We're compressing with a vintage style again, a lot subtler now, and it's a single band, so we're just doing one band of compression. And then we're doing a digital compressor, and we're going with 2 bands this time. A lot of compression here on the top end and just a little bit on the lower end. And that's all we're doing in this one. So this is before. Okay, so we could obviously change our settings there. We could say we want it to be warmer and we want it to be intensity high, or we might want it up front. We'll try warm. We'll do high now just so that it goes to extreme levels. Okay, so when we go to extreme levels here, we're making it warmer as we picked. So it's dulling out the top end of the bass, putting a lot more low end there. So that's definitely trying to make it warmer. It has now added some excitement on the low end to give a big boost there. And it's changed our compressor a lot. So we're now compressing quite heavily on the low end. And we're pretty much across the board on each of those bands. And again, 14:1 across the range for a compressor. We are, when they say high, they really mean high. Okay, and let's do one in up front. So now you'll see we've gone back to that similar EQ that we did the first time when we had it more balanced. And our exciter is back in there again, a bit more subtle. We've only got one compressor this time. We don't have a vintage style one. We only have a digital one. Quite heavily compressed though. Definitely sounds like it brings it forward a bit. Okay, so let's just do it one more time on one more track. Let's go with a drum track this time. We'll just do a quick one. And we'll just go with balanced medium. Okay, so you can see the EQ that it's applied, what it believes needs to happen. It's also applied an exciter to excite the top end with a retro and a little bit of the rest of the lower frequencies. And then a simple compressor here, 6.9:1, so still fairly heavily compressed, but it is only mixed in 75%. So that's probably what it's doing. It's doing sort of parallel compression there. And Neutron has picked up drums. Definitely changing the sound there. It's definitely squashing that snare and a bit of that kick, and you can hear a lot of the room is being brought up. Okay, so a lot of people obviously talk about something like Track Assistant as being a cheat. You know, it's doing it for you. It's doing it automatically. You don't even need to know how to mix anymore. Just plug Neutron on every one of your tracks and do Track Assistant. Now, I actually tried that once as an example just to see what it would actually do, and the mix sounded absolutely horrible because Track Assistant is listening to each of the tracks independently in isolation, which doesn't mean that they're always going to fit together. So what do I think Track Assistant is a bad thing? No, I don't. I think it's actually a good thing. Why do I think it's a good thing if it sounds horrible on sometimes? Because it can be good to give you an idea of where you should be looking, okay? If you're struggling to get a track to fit in the mix, or you just can't get it to sound right, it's just not working for you, Track Assistant can give you some clues to what to look for. You know, if you run Track Assistant and you see an EQ curve like this, I'm not suggesting you leave it like this, but it can give you a guide, and you can say, okay, well, it thinks that there's too much frequencies in the 486 range, which that range makes something sound very sort of boxy and not very pleasant. And then you've got the 131 hertz. So obviously there's a bit of boom going on there that we want to cut out. So you might look at that and go, okay, do I agree or not agree? So what you can do is, let's say we turn the rest of it off. Let's just look at the EQ. You might go in here and go, okay, this is what Track Assistant believes I should do. Let me have a listen to see if I agree with it. So I'm going to then deliberately boost that range. So I may say, well, actually, I don't really agree with that, but maybe I'll bring it back. Maybe it needs it a little bit. Let's have a listen to number 3. Okay, now I can listen to that and go, that's a horrible sound. I agree. Now, if that was... if this is how your drums sounded before the EQ, but you just couldn't work out what that annoying sound was or where it was, that sound, it's picked it out, cut it out, and you can go whatever level you want, right? So the way I see Track Assistant is a starting point. It's a guide. It's giving you some helpful tips, but you need to then actually adjust it and use it to fix it in the mix. Do not just Track Assistant's not going to help you if you just go and put a Track Assistant on every track and just go, yep, done. I'm done with the mix. It's not going to work. Because as I said, it's not comparing. If you put Track Assistant on the bass and it goes and boosts the bass and it does this, then you do that on the kick and it goes, oh, I like a nice fat kick. I want that, boost that, boost that. Suddenly you put the bass and the kick together. They're both clashing because they've both been boosted in the same frequency range, and suddenly they don't work anymore. So it gives you an idea and it gives you a guide, and it's going to pick out frequencies that it believes should be cut or should be boosted. You know, in the case here, it believes there should be a bit of a boost here at 1.6K. Again, listen to it, boost it even more. See if you agree with it. If you don't agree with it, take it away, turn it off. Right? Track Assistant is not locked in. It just gives you a starting point and then play with it. Again, it turned on the exciter. Have a play with it. Look at the settings and work out what it's doing. Why did it do that? Play with the sound. Boost it deliberately to hear what it's doing and make some calls on it. So that's where I see Track Assistant working. It's a very good learning tool and can give you a great starting point to get some unusual frequencies out of the way and a guide. So use it that way and it can be very helpful to you. So there you go. That's Track Assistant in iZotope Neutron. As I said, I think it's a good little tool there for learning and fast tracking your mix. Definitely not something that I would just put on every single track of your mix, click on it and go, yep, I've mixed the song, because your song's going to sound horrible. Trust me, I did try it once out of curiosity and it did sound horrible. You got to keep in mind that these Track Assistant is looking at each track independently and it's not comparing to the other tracks in the song. It also doesn't really know the genre of the song. It doesn't care about that or the style that you're going for. So to me, it is a useful guide. It gives you a starting point, some suggestions of what you might need to do, and you then take that and tweak it and turn things on and off and adjust the settings so that it actually sounds the way it should sound, as opposed to what the software has tried to determine. But I still think it's useful, and I still think it is a great addition to the plugins. So go and check it out. Hopefully it's been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.